I never imagined life could shift so completely with just 5 words. I'm bored with you, Lubava. That's what Victor said one Tuesday morning in September, standing in our kitchen, his suitcase already waiting by the door. 23 years of marriage, unraveled in a single sentence, while I stood holding a spatula, egg yolk sliding onto the Italian marble floor. He didn't raise his voice. No dramatic argument, no final embrace. Just those 5 words, spoken as casually as commenting on the forecast. And then he was gone. My name is Lubava Petrov. I'm 50 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I understood my life. I was the wife of a prominent commercial real estate developer, the former owner of a modest but respected art gallery in downtown Philadelphia, and a woman who had quietly accepted that passion belonged to youth. I had routines, friends, charity committees, and 2 persimmon-colored cats, Pushkin and Tolstoy, named for my Russian roots. I had comfort, stability, and if not joy, then a kind of steady peace. Or so I believed. Now, this house, my house, stands alone in Chestnut Hill, a Victorian beauty with wraparound porches and far too many rooms for one. My grandmother would have called it a white elephant. Elegant, impractical. After Victor left, I drifted through it like a figure in a painting, touching door frames, staring out windows at the rusting leaves. Some nights, I'd sleep curled on the library window seat, other nights wrapped in an Afghan on the porch swing, or simply seated on the cool kitchen tiles with Pushkin warming my lap, wondering how a man could share your life for decades and still feel like a stranger. The silence was the cruelest thing. Victor was never much of a talker, preferring stock reports to stories, but his presence filled the space, his keys dropping on the hallway table, the rhythm of his steps, the slight rasp in his throat before he spoke. Now, all that remained was the creak of old floorboards and the soft shuffle of feline paws across hardwood. "You'll be fine, Luba," my sister Irina said during one of her daily calls from Chicago. "You're still beautiful. You'll find someone new." But the thought of dating again, at 50, felt surreal. After decades with one man, how was I supposed to begin? The reflection in the mirror didn't offer reassurance. My dark hair now shimmered with silver I never bothered to dye. The eyes Victor once said looked like frozen Siberian lakes seemed dulled, like denim left too long in the sun. Then, in late October, during a heavy rain, a moving truck pulled up next door. I stood behind the curtain, watching workers carry out ornate antiques, sleek modern furniture, an easel, and stacks of carefully wrapped canvases. The Colonial had stood empty since the Hendersons moved away. I always admired their neat red door and boxwood hedges. I wasn't expecting someone like her. She appeared at dusk, just as the movers were finishing up. A woman roughly my age, though she carried herself with such vibrance and intention that time seemed to bend around her. She wore a crimson coat that danced in the wind as she guided the placement of an oversized ceramic planter beside her front door. Even in the fading light and soft rain, it was impossible not to notice her. She was tall, full of presence, with a mane of unruly dark curls streaked with white. Every gesture she made held a kind of dramatic elegance, bold, unrestrained, like someone who had long since made peace with being fully herself. "You're staring!" Pushkin seemed to accuse as he rubbed against my ankle. "I'm observing," I replied quietly, though I let the curtain fall and stepped back, unexpectedly aware of myself. The next morning, I was juggling grocery bags when I heard a warm, melodic voice with a gentle European lilt. "Need some help with those?" She was crossing the small lawn between our homes, wearing paint-streaked overalls over a crisp white shirt. Her hair was swept up in a loose knot, pinned with what I could only assume was a paintbrush. As she approached, her features sharpened in the sunlight. Olive-toned skin, cheekbones like sculpture, deep-set espresso eyes, and the kind of smile that comes only from someone who has lived fully and without apology. "I'm fine, thank you," I said, though my arms clearly disagreed. "Of course you are," she replied, already taking 2 bags from me. "But 4 hands are always better than 2, no?" She extended a colorful, speckled hand. "I'm Laura Ricci." Her fingers were stained in shades of ochre and cobalt, hints of stories left behind on canvas. Her hands felt like art in motion, capable, expressive, alive. Lyubava Petrov, I answered as we reached my front door. Lyubava, she repeated with perfect ease, like it was a melody she already knew. That's Russian, yes? A beautiful name, it means beloved. It does, I nodded, slightly caught off guard. How did you know? She offered a graceful shrug. I lived in St. Petersburg for a year, studied at the Repin Academy. Your roots are Russian. My grandparents came from Moscow. I've never been. You should go, she said with quiet certainty, as if inviting me to rediscover a forgotten part of myself. It's in your face, your posture. You carry it with you, even if you don't realize. We stepped into the kitchen together. She placed the bags on the counter, her eyes sweeping across the space. Not judging, just curious, present. It was the one room I'd truly made mine. Warm-toned wood, rich countertops, copper fixtures that glowed in the morning light. Outside the window, my herbs stirred in the breeze, but I barely noticed. She was standing close enough that I caught the scent of paint and citrus soap. Something about the nearness of her, the way she looked not just at things, but into them, made the space feel different, more alive, more awake. Beautiful space, she commented. You cook? I used to, I admitted. Not so much lately. Something in my voice must have given me away, because her gaze shifted. Less casual now, more curious. Ah, recent change? Divorce? Her frankness caught me off guard. In my world, personal upheavals were hinted at delicately, if mentioned at all. Yes, I answered, surprised by my own honesty. Very recent, she nodded. No trace of sympathy, just quiet understanding. I've had two. Husbands, I mean. Both painters. Both. Let's just say they were better with color than commitment. She shrugged with a wry smile. But life is movement, isn't it? One chapter ends, another begins. Before I could respond, Tolstoy padded into the room, eyeing her with his usual aloofness. Oh, what a prince! She crouched, holding her hand out, fingers relaxed. To my astonishment, Tolstoy leaned into her touch without hesitation. What's his name? Tolstoy, the other one is Pushkin. She laughed, deep, velvety, and a little mischievous. It curled through the kitchen like warm spice. Of course, two Russians. So you really are committed to the theme. Then, rising to her feet, she asked with effortless ease, Have you eaten? I was just about to throw something together. And just like that, it began. Over a simple plate of spaghetti aglio e olio that she made as though she'd done it in my kitchen 100 times. She moved through the space with the kind of graceful confidence that made it feel less like a visit, more like a return, like a memory I hadn't known I'd lost. She talked as she stirred and sliced, telling stories with animated hands and vivid laughter. Florence had been her home for years, until her gallery closed. The rent, dear God, impossible. She had chosen Philadelphia for its art scene and affordability. Not New York or San Francisco prices, thank goodness. Her eyes sparkled when she said it. Oh, I've actually been watching the place next door, she admitted, winding pasta around her fork with quiet satisfaction. That bay window upstairs? The one facing north? It's got perfect light. That's where I'll set up my studio. I found myself telling her about my own gallery, how I'd sold it 5 years ago when Victor's business expanded and required more of my time for social functions and client dinners. You miss it, she observed. Yes, I admitted, surprised by my own candor. Very much. Then why not go back? Open another? I smiled at her naivety. It's not that simple. Why not? She challenged, refilling our wine glasses. What's stopping you? I had no good answer. For the first time in months, I felt something stir within me, a flicker of possibility, quickly extinguished by doubt. I'm too old to start over. Laura snorted. Ridiculous. Monet created his water lily masterpieces in his 70s. Georgia O'Keeffe painted into her 90s. Age is nothing, says the woman who's clearly never still. I replied dryly. Precisely! She raised her glass in a toast. To motion, to change, to new beginnings. I hesitated, then clinked my glass against hers. To new beginnings, I echoed, not quite believing it, but wanting to. Over the next few weeks, Laura became a fixture in my life, appearing at odd hours with some small pretext, borrowing sugar, returning a casserole dish, asking about the best place to buy art supplies. In reality, I think she sensed my loneliness and was too kind-hearted to leave me to it. She was like no one I'd ever known, utterly uninhibited, passionate about everything from politics to pasta sauce, completely comfortable in her own skin. She painted at all hours, often forgetting to eat until I appeared at her door with soup or sandwiches. Some days I'd look out my bedroom window to see her on her balcony at dawn, smoking a single cigarette. Her one vice, she claimed, wrapped in a vibrant silk robe as she contemplated the sunrise, with an intensity that made me feel like I'd never truly looked at the sky before. And the music! Laura lived with a soundtrack, operatic arias that soared through open windows on warm afternoons, jazz that slinked through the evening air. Occasionally, something modern and edgy that made me laugh to think of this 50-ish woman dancing around her studio to Radiohead or Arcade Fire. The neighborhood association president, Mrs. Wellington, stopped by one day to have a word about the volume, but somehow left an hour later with a small watercolor and an invitation to Laura's upcoming housewarming. "You should come too," Laura told me later that evening as we sat on my porch, sharing a bottle of Brunello she'd brought over. The November air was chilly, but we were wrapped in throes, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood. "In fact, you should help me host. You know all these American customs better than I do." "I'm hardly a social butterfly these days," I demurred. Exactly why you should do it," she insisted. "Lyubava, you can't hide in this beautiful mausoleum forever." "It's not a mausoleum," I protested. "No? Then why do you move through it like you're afraid to disturb the dead?" Her words stung because they contained truth. I had been living cautiously, as if Victor might return at any moment and criticize some change I'd made. Even now, months later, his shirt still hung in the closet. His favorite scotch remained on the bar cart. His reading glasses lay on his nightstand. Relics of a life interrupted. "I'm not ready," I said finally. "No one ever is," Laura replied gently. "We do things before we're ready, or we never do them at all." The housewarming party was scheduled for the first weekend in December. Despite my reluctance, I found myself helping Laura prepare, arranging caterers, selecting wines, even helping her hang a few of her smaller pieces for display. The process awakened something in me, a forgotten pleasure in creating beauty, in anticipating others' enjoyment. The afternoon of the party, I was in my closet trying to find something suitable to wear when I heard Laura's distinctive knock. 3 rapid taps, followed by 2 slower ones, musical like everything about her. "It's open!" I called, still frowning at my wardrobe full of understated, expensive clothes that suddenly seemed to belong to someone else. "You're not dressed?" Laura appeared in my bedroom doorway, looking magnificent in a deep green velvet dress that emphasized her curves, her wild hair partially tamed into an elegant updo. "I can't decide what to wear," I admitted. "Everything seems wrong." She tilted her head, studying me in my robe, then disappeared into my closet. I heard hangers sliding, drawers opening and closing, soft Italian muttering. She emerged with a dress I barely recognized, midnight blue silk with a draped neckline, something I'd bought years ago for a gallery opening and never worn again, because Victor had commented that it was trying too hard. "This," Laura declared, "with your pearls and those silver heels I saw in the corner." "It's too much," I protested. "It's exactly enough," she countered. "Go, get ready, I'll wait." 30 minutes later, I emerged from the bathroom to find Laura perched on the edge of my bed, leafing through an art book she'd pulled from my shelf. She looked up as I entered, and something flickered across her face, an expression I couldn't quite identify. "Well?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. She set the book aside and stood, coming to stand before me. Her eyes, warm and appreciative, moved over me in a way that made my skin tingle. "You're beautiful, Lyubava," she said simply. 3 words. Just 3 ordinary words. But they broke something open inside me. a dam holding back years of feeling unseen, unappreciated, undesired. To my horror, tears welled in my eyes and spilled down my cheeks. "Oh no, I've ruined my makeup," I tried to joke, turning away. But Laura caught my hand, turning me back to face her. Without a word, she pulled me into an embrace, her arms strong and sure around me. I stiffened at first, then melted against her, breathing in her scent. Oil paint and sandalwood and something essentially, uniquely Laura. "Cry if you need to," she murmured against my hair. "Tears clean the soul." We stood like that, her holding me, until my tears subsided. When I finally pulled back, embarrassed, she gently wiped a tear from my cheek with her thumb, the tenderness of the gesture almost breaking me again. "Now," she said briskly, returning to her usual demeanor. "Compose yourself. We have a party to host." That night was transformative. Laura's home hummed with a mix of people: artists, academics, neighbors, even a few curious passers-by who had heard the music and seen the lights. Under her influence, I found myself joining in conversations about art and literature, laughing at jokes, accepting compliments on my dress, my home, and the canapes I'd helped prepare. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt truly alive. Late in the evening, I found myself by Laura's piano as a music professor from Drexel played jazz standards. Laura appeared beside me, slightly flushed from wine and lively conversation. "Happy?" she asked, linking her arm through mine. "Yes," I realized, surprised by the sincerity of it. "I am." She smiled, a quiet, intimate smile just for me, and squeezed my arm. "Good, it suits you." The party marked a turning point. In the days that followed, something shifted between Laura and me, a growing awareness, an undeniable charge in the air whenever we interacted. I found myself thinking about her constantly, eagerly awaiting her visits, savoring our every conversation. When she invited me to see her studio, I didn't hesitate. Nothing could have prepared me for the experience of stepping into Laura's creative space. The room was bathed in soft northern light, with canvases in various stages of completion leaning against the walls. And at the center, a massive work in progress, a self-portrait, her figure captured in bold brushstrokes of ochre, sienna, and rose. "You paint yourself," I remarked, unable to tear my eyes from the canvas. "Of course," she replied, mixing her colors with quiet confidence. "Who else is better to explore than oneself? But it's so exposed." She turned her gaze on me, direct and knowing. "That's art, Lubava. Exposure, truth. If we can't face ourselves honestly, what do we have?" I wandered around the studio, admiring her other works. Landscapes, still lifes, but mostly figures. Most of them women, each painted with unflinching honesty, celebrating the form and essence of the human body. "They're extraordinary," I said, meaning every word. "Thank you." She set down her palette and wiped her hands on a cloth. "Would you let me paint you someday?" The question hung in the air between us, weighted with unspoken meaning. "I don't know if I'm brave enough for that," I answered honestly. "I think you are," she said, "braver than you know." That night, I dreamed of Laura's hands, those artist's hands moving over canvas, transforming chaos into beauty. I woke disoriented, my heart racing, my body alive with sensations I thought I'd forgotten. The week before Christmas, an ice storm hit Philadelphia, knocking out power across Chestnut Hill. The temperature in my house dropped steadily as evening approached. Laura appeared at my back door, bundled in layers, carrying an armful of firewood. "Pack a bag," she instructed. "My house has a generator. The cats too, of course." I hesitated, but the decision was made for me when Pushkin and Tolstoy made a break for the door, clearly preferring Laura's warm house to our increasingly frigid one. "Traitors," I muttered, but followed with a hastily packed overnight bag. Laura's home was warm and glowing with candlelight despite the power outage, the generator humming efficiently outside. She'd lit a fire in the living room hearth and moved her mattress downstairs in front of it, creating a cozy nest of pillows and quilts. "The bedrooms are too cold," she explained. We'll camp here. We spent the evening huddled by the fire, drinking red wine and talking as the ice storm raged outside. Laura told me stories of her childhood in Tuscany, her first art show in Milan, and the affairs and heartbreaks that had shaped her. I found myself reciprocating, sharing things I'd never told anyone. My parents' difficult adjustment to American life, my early dreams of being an artist rather than a gallery owner, the slow erosion of my marriage. Victor never hit me, never cheated. That I know of, I explained. He just stopped seeing me. I became furniture, comfortable, reliable, invisible. He was a fool, Laura said fiercely, to have such a woman and not see her, not cherish her. The wine, the firelight, her words, they all combined to create a moment of perfect intimacy. When Laura reached across the space between us and took my hand, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I see you, Lubava, she whispered. Her kiss, when it came, was soft, a question more than a demand. I answered by leaning into it, my hand coming up to cradle her face. It had been so long since I'd been kissed with genuine desire, with attention and care. Her lips were soft, her touch gentle as she traced the line of my jaw, my neck, and collarbone. Is this okay? She murmured against my skin. Yes, I breathed. Yes. That night by the fire, Laura awakened parts of me I'd thought forever dormant. Her touch was like that of an artist, deliberate, curious, focused on how I responded, on what she could bring out of me. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly beautiful, beneath someone's gaze, beneath someone's touch. Afterward, lying in her arms as the fire burned low, I felt no shame, no regret, only wonder at the capacity of the human heart to expand, to embrace the unexpected, to begin again. I never knew, I whispered into the darkness, that it could be like this, that I could feel this way at my age. Laura's laugh rumbled against my ear. Age has nothing to do with it, cara mia. The heart doesn't count years. It only knows what it wants. The power returned 2 days later, but something fundamental had changed. I moved through my house with new eyes, suddenly seeing all the ways it no longer reflected me. The formal dining room I never used, Victor's leather study I'd always disliked, the muted color palette that had been his preference, not mine. In the new year, I began making changes. Small at first, then more significant. I donated Victor's clothes to a shelter, converted his study into a reading room filled with the art books I loved, repainted the living room a warm terracotta that reminded me of Tuscan hillsides. I started cooking again, experimenting with recipes Laura taught me, filling the house with aromas of garlic, basil, and lemon. And I let Laura paint me. Not in the nude. I wasn't quite that brave yet, but in a simple linen shirt, my silver-streaked hair loose around my shoulders, my expression open and unguarded. When she showed me the finished portrait, I hardly recognized myself. The woman on the canvas looked serene, confident, sensual in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty and everything to do with self-possession. This is how you see me? I asked, astonished. This is who you are, Laura corrected gently. Spring came early that year, the cherry blossoms in my backyard exploding into pink clouds by mid-March. Laura and I settled into a relationship that defied easy categorization. We maintained separate homes, but spent most nights together, either in her bed, surrounded by canvases, or in mine, with the cats curled at our feet. We didn't discuss the future beyond planning summer trips to Cape May or deciding what to plant in our adjoining gardens. Not everything was easy. Coming out to my sister at 50 was terrifying, though Irina surprised me with her quick acceptance. I just want you happy, Liuba, she said simply. Some of my old friends drifted away, uncomfortable with this new version of me. Laura's mercurial moods, the dark days when creating went poorly, when she would withdraw into silence or burst into passionate Italian tirades over seemingly nothing, tested my patience and triggered all my old insecurities. And always, there was the age difference. Not in years, but in experience. Laura had lived openly, had loved women before. Everything was new to me, delicate, raw. Sometimes I would panic, convinced I was going through some predictable midlife crisis that would leave me more broken than before. "You think too much," Laura would say, kissing my forehead when she found me brooding. "Feel more, think less." In late April, Victor called. He was in town and wanted to collect the rest of his things. "Natasha and I are getting married," he said, naming his young assistant I'd met only once or twice. "We need the silver service from your grandmother for our new place." I agreed to meet him on a Tuesday morning. Laura offered to be there, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone. He looked older when he arrived, thinner, the lines around his mouth more pronounced. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, my hair now cut in a stylish bob, my body more toned from the yoga classes Laura had encouraged me to take, my clothing brighter and less conservative. "You look different," he commented as I led him to the living room, where I'd boxed his remaining possessions. "I'm different," I replied simply. His gaze wandered around the transformed space. The new coat of paint, the rearranged furniture, and the large portrait Laura had painted of me, now proudly displayed. "You've been busy," he said. "The house looks like mine." I finished for him. He nodded slowly. "Yes, like yours." He picked up a small bronze sculpture of a female figure that Laura had given me for my birthday. "This is new." "Yes." I gently took it from him and placed it back on the mantel. "That's not for sale." For a brief moment, a flicker of regret crossed his face, but it was gone almost immediately. He squared his shoulders, gesturing to the boxes. "I'll just get these to the car." As I watched him carry item after item out to his luxury SUV, I waited for some kind of emotional response: anger, sadness, vindication. Instead, I felt only calm detachment, as though watching a stranger empty out a storage unit. When he finished, he paused at the door. "You seem well, Lyubava." "I am well," I confirmed. "Good." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry, for how things ended." I studied him, this man with whom I'd spent more than half my life, and was surprised to realize I felt no resentment. "Don't be," I said honestly. "It was the best thing you ever did for me." His expression of surprise was the last thing I saw before I closed the door, officially ending that chapter of my life. Later, Laura was waiting on the porch when I returned from a long walk. Concern was clear on her face. "How was it?" I sat beside her, taking her paint-streaked hand in mine. "Surprisingly easy." She searched my expression. "No regrets?" "None," I assured her. And it was true. In losing what I had thought was my whole world, I had found a new universe of possibility. In the end of one love, another had blossomed and thrived. That evening, we sat in the garden, watching fireflies rise from the grass like stars. Laura asked casually, "Have you ever thought of going to Italy?" "Of course," I replied. "Someday." "What about this summer?" She plucked a sprig of lavender and twirled it between her fingers. "My sister has an old farmhouse in Umbria. It's nothing fancy, but the light there. You'd love it. You could paint." "Me?" I laughed. "I haven't painted since college." "So?" "You have an eye, Lyubava. I've seen how you see the world." She turned fully to face me. 3 months. We could leave after my show closes in June, return for the new semester in September. What do you think? I thought of my comfortable home, my predictable routines, the security of the known. Then I thought of the Italian sunlight, ancient stone walls warming beneath my touch, evenings spent sipping wine under olive trees, days spent rediscovering the world through an artist's eyes. My own eyes. "Yes," I said, surprised by the certainty in my voice. "Let's go to Italy." Laura's smile lit up her face. "Just like that? No lists of pros and cons? No detailed planning?" I laughed, leaning in to kiss her softly. "Just like that. You're rubbing off on me, I think." "Good," she murmured against my lips. "Because you've changed me too, And it was true. For all her boldness, Laura had learned patience from me. For all my caution, I had learned courage from her. Together, we were creating something new, a love that honored who we had been, but celebrated who we were becoming. Tonight, as I write this, Laura is asleep upstairs. Tomorrow, we leave for Italy, a journey I never expected to take at 50, with a woman I never expected to love. Our tickets are on the desk, our suitcases packed. The cats will stay with Irina's daughter, who has promised daily photo updates. The house will wait for our return, or perhaps we'll decide to stay longer in Italy or go somewhere else entirely. For the first time in my life, I don't need to know exactly what comes next. I only know that whatever it is, I'll face it fully awake, fully alive, fully myself. Who would have thought that 5 cruel words, "I'm bored with you, Lubava," would set in motion the most extraordinary chapter of my life? Who would have imagined that at 50, I would discover that love isn't about security or stability or social approval, but about being truly seen, about the electric awareness that pulses through you when you're finally touched, not just on your skin, but in the quiet, sacred places of your soul? This is what I've learned. It's never too late to begin again. The heart remains capable of astonishment at any age, and sometimes, the most profound blessings arrive disguised as endings. Laura was right. The only constant is change, and for that I am infinitely grateful.